So that really leads us to nicely into the next segment, where I'd like to introduce John Lui from Australia. So we've been spending a lot of time talking about everything that we can do to advocate for ourselves, to raise awareness in school and in the workplace. But it can be natural to feel that it can be a lonely journey trying to do this, especially if we live in areas where there may not be many people with hearing loss nearby. So John is the national manager for an organization called Here For You, and he will highlight some of the work in the organization on how to create a community of people with hearing loss to be able to provide that peer support so that we do not have to feel that we are on the journey of raising awareness and advocacy on our own. So without further ado, the floor is yours, John.
Thanks, Bowen. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you online and virtually. And I'm here to talk about Here For You. So I'm the national manager. And I was born profoundly deaf in both ears and had hearing aids until I was 10 before I was implanted in my left ear with a cochlear implant. And so it's been quite a journey going through high school and university with a cochlear implant and going through all these sorts of situations and strategies that we've been talking about in taking ownership. But today I would like to go back a little bit further and talk about teenagers and talking about the concept of ownership in what we do. And so at Here For You, what do? We run mentoring programs for deaf or hard of hearing teenagers who are in high school. But the point of difference is that all our volunteer mentors are deaf or hard of hearing as well. So that provides a unique point of difference in that our mentors can share that lived experience. And so the mentors all our lives, we have dealt with the misconceptions and misinformation surrounding deafness or hearing loss. So therefore, we and our mentors are in a position to offer advice and empower our teenagers on how to best deal with it. And so I'd like to give a shout out to one of our mentors who's actually joining in today from Australia. His name is Louis. So Louis, thanks for joining us today. And so why was Here For You started? It was started because 90% of deaf or hard of hearing teenagers come from hearing families. They learn to hear and speak with devices. They may have hearing friends. They go to mainstream schools and engage in mainstream activities. They play sport. They do all these social activities. Basically, they're just like normal teenagers on the outside. However, they may be the only one in their school with a hearing loss. Perhaps they have never met another deaf person since the early intervention years when they've gone to a centre where they've learned to hear and speak and meet other babies. But since then, they haven't met another teenager in the same situation. And so you have questions about their deaf identity. Are they deaf? Are they hard of hearing? Are they hearing impaired? Are they capital D deaf? Do they use sign language? And so we've been talking about all these support and strategies that are necessary, like for example, in Mariko's presentation about needing to support the students with, to the teachers, through the schools, through the principals. But that means they have questions about the deaf identity later on in their life. And so one of the biggest things we found here is that they didn't have a specific community of their own. Because historically, you've got the deaf community, the signing deaf community, and then you've got the hearing world. And so those who are learning to hear and speak in their devices felt like they were caught in between these two worlds. And so they couldn't find a place for them to actually belong to. And that's where we're seeing Here For You as a great place to be. And so what is our message? Our message is that as mentors, we're here to offer advice. We're not here to tell them what they have to do or must do as a deaf or hard of hearing person. We're just here to offer that advice. We want them to understand that this is their place. We want them to feel comfortable in sharing their experiences. And this takes time because as teenagers, they haven't really thought about what it means to be a deaf person. And then when they start feeling comfortable about sharing their experiences or hearing other people's experiences, they can then start thriving instead of just surviving, which is a big thing in teenage years because all you want to do is just fit in high school. You just want to blend in, you just want to be invisible. And so it's really difficult to ask a teenager to stand out and advocate for themselves. But ultimately, when they start to realize that it's their life, it's their journey, we want them to take control. So essentially, life lessons are important. And then they need to learn these life lessons earlier than their hearing peers because of their deafness or hearing loss. So this is a critical point here where we're talking about ownership. They need to understand the why. Why do I need to advocate? Why do I need to tell the teacher? Why do I need to tell strangers around me about my hearing? Why? Because it's important for them to be understood and for them to understand people. So it's a life thing. It's not just a deaf thing. Most importantly, we actually address the actual elephant in the room. We talk about what it's like to be deaf. We talk about all the practical realities of being deaf, like your battery goes flat in the classroom, or you're talking to someone, you can't understand them because you're trying to liberate them and they've got facial hair, or they've got a very strong accent, or they keep looking away when you're talking to them. So it's really important that we talk about what it's actually like to be deaf, and then they can complain about it. They can get off their chest with other people who actually understand the same situation. And so where it's here for you, best place to deliver value. And so you can see that in the individual, we've got different bubbles in their lives. We've got family and friends, we've got education, we've got extracurricular activities like sport, music, dance, art, whatever. And you've got hearing health, you've got speech therapists, audiologies, doctors, those around you from the professional space, the clinical space, you've got education space, you've got your personal life. But here for you, we look at directly empowering our individuals. And an important aspect of this is that our mentors, through this process of mentoring the teenagers, it's actually beneficial to them because they get to reflect on their own lives and reflect on how they deal with these things. So it goes both ways. However, there is a spanner in the works. If I was in high school, and this is going back 20 years, my 20-year reunion is actually coming up this weekend, so it's quite a shock to see how long I've spent out of high school. But if he for you was around when I was in high school, I would not have attended. Why? You've got to consider the metrics of success. What is success? I'm good at academically. I was good at sports. I had lots of friends. I had a social life. I felt normal. So why should I go and meet these people that I don't know on my weekends to talk about their things? Why? And so what's in it for them? There's always technology, services, support available for deaf or hard of hearing teenagers and young adults. We acknowledge that the support and structure around our teenagers and families is critical in the first place. That's how we get them to this point. But taking ownership of their situation is much a higher level. States where this is a life thing. So why should teenagers and young adults engage with what's important to them? That depends on their priority as a deaf person. One, is it to fit in and become more invisible, which is okay, or are they coming to terms with their deaf identity and the practical realities of it? Now, when we talk about ownership and all these people today who have talked about their experiences and the need to advocate, we have to realize that we ourselves are a very small percentage of those who are implanted. It's like saying that everybody needs to be extrovert and be able to talk about it all the time. So it does take time for everyone to take ownership first. But when they actually speak up about it on a public scale, a large scale, or whether it's just within their small circle of family and friends, it's up to them. So ownership can look very different in different ways. And so when might the penny drop? When might you actually click and say, okay, I actually need to take control of my situation? One is when they leave the support bubble and life hits. By the support bubble, I'm talking about primary school and high school. Because if they are well supported by the teachers, their family, they're confident, their self-esteem, their friends, all understand and know about their hearing loss. They know how to support them. But when they start going into the workforce, or as Helen said, into higher education, tertiary education, or they start increasing their interaction with strangers, people around them who don't know what it means for them to be deaf, that's when they see the value of connecting with other people in the same situation. That's when they see the value of sharing their experiences and hearing from other people what they might do in the same situation, or how other people perceive what might be a difficult situation for them, but it's actually a non-issue for the other people. And through these experiences, they talk about that, like when I was in high school, I never really used the FM. I never really used the Roger pen because I would sit at the front of the class I used to literally be the teacher and the international school. All the teachers were from the UK, so they were easy for me to hear and lip read. But when I came back to Australia and going into the high school there, that was very difficult because of different accents, the different methods of teaching. And so we find in our programs when the teenagers actually talk to one another about these experiences, one teenager might say, I hate the FM, I'm not going to use it. I don't want to use it because I don't like walking up to the teacher in front of the class and getting it to them because it makes me stand out. But then you have someone else who says, well, look, I actually want to use the FM because it's beneficial to me. I want to get the information that I need to do well in school. And so by these sharing of experiences between the teenagers is really powerful, and even more powerful than from mentor to the teenagers, because they can see that their peers are actually making use of things and they're going, okay, well, if this guy is using his FM, maybe I will too, because I want to do well. And so that's where through all these different steps, they get to actually saying, okay, well, I'm not doing as well as I could, or I want to do better, or how can I make my life easier, or how can I be more efficient in what we do? That's when I ask for help, or that's when I start saying, okay, like Yana said, this is a problem. I need to start advocating for myself. And so that's the genesis of what I want to talk about today is that, okay, we know it's important to have ownership, but why? Why is the big thing? And so think about the person as a person first, and then the deafness or hearing loss magnifies all the issues that they go through. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Thank you.
John, thank you. And that was really, again, incredibly insightful. I think people were finding lots of different things in that, looking at the chat room, and there's lots of comments that have tried to take the conversation on further rather than just asking questions. But I think one thing that's come up a lot in the chat room is what you encapsulated by saying a lot of these are life problems that then have an element that's about deafness or hearing loss. And I think that struck home a lot as well. And just in that, what is your kind of take on how you move the whole conversation on? So it's something that's integrated into people's lives and not just some strange thing that exists somewhere else as a problem just for a particular group.
Yeah, generally I say for our teenagers, okay, yes, we have deafness and it's a problem because we need to adjust our lives. But it's also eye-opening thing for them to realize that other people are going through problems too. Everybody's got their own issues. And so it's not just all about deafness, deaf people versus hearing people. It's about all people dealing with the situation they go through in life. It just so happens that we have deafness. That's how I sort of say things. And then from there, you can drill down to the practical strategies. For example, an eye-opener for me was that growing up, I used to think that hearing people could hear everything perfectly all the time. And so when I realized, no, hearing people actually miss things, it's just that their brain captures something a lot quicker than ours. Then I realized, oh, okay, that's important because for me, I have to make sure that my communication is clear. So then hearing people can understand me. And if I can't understand hearing people, I have to make sure I let them know. So it's a life thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Bowen, back to you.
Thank you, Brian and John. And I just want to add on to one of the comments that, like Here For You is a fantastic program that benefits a lot of young people, the teenagers in Australia. There are also other organizations around the world that do similar work in trying to create a space for the teenagers and young people to connect. And just recently, I myself ran a weekend camp for the families whose child is deaf and hard of hearing. And one of the key takeaway from the parent was that they saw how the child acted so much more confident in the camp setting with other peers with hearing loss, as opposed to how she behaved in school where she didn't have that confidence. So by being able to go into that space, is starting to build that confidence when they when she sees how other peers are able to navigate their school lives. So that's a classic example of like the impact these community spaces can offer to families and to children and to young people. And on a final note about this is that there's always the timing for everything. So as a teacher of a deaf and hard of hearing myself, I've often tried to encourage my students to attend those events. But again, like John said, a lot of them may not see the necessity of going to these spaces while they're in school because they think they have everything that they need at the time. But when the practical realities hit as they get older, then they realize the value of these community spaces to be able to connect with those who can relate to the challenges that they go through.